Learning by design gives us an introduction to gamification. How do kids manage to perform as they do at school and on the other hand challenge themselves willingly by figuring out how certain games work? They go even further. They want to excel at these games. They want to be good at them. What is it then that makes games the challenge kids seek out, and how could we integrate these gaming principles into our own teaching? G offers 13 items that enable computer games to offer a world where learning is occurring almost accidental. 13 thoughts which enable us to change our ways of teaching for the better and stimulate students intrinsically to learn.
Call of Duty is a first-person and third-person shooter video game series franchise. The series began on the PC and later expanded to consoles and handhelds. The earlier games in the series are set primarily in World War II. Starting with Modern Warfare, set in modern times, the series has shifted focus away from World War. Modern Warfare was followed by Modern Warfare 2, set in modern times, and Black Ops, set during the Cold War. Modern Warfare 3, also set in modern times, was released in November 2011. The next title in the franchise, Black Ops 2, is due for release in November 2012. As of November 2011, the Call of Duty series have sold over 100 million copies. As of March 2012, there are 40 million monthly active players across all of the Duty titles, with 10 million Call of Duty Elite users and 2 million paying annual members. Over 1.6 billion hours of online gameplay have been logged in the latest game, Modern Warfare 3.
Co-design is about engaged participation. Games teach us that the actions and decisions people make help co-create the world they play in. In order to do this properly, we have to understand the design of the domain. We have to know how everything works to make good choices about how to affect that design. If you transfer that to education, one could ask these questions. Do students have a say about their learning? Are they helping to design their own learning? Enabling students to have a say in course material, the curriculum, the means of working with material, etc. makes them more in control. Making them co-designers improves the learning they do.
Call of Duty is an example of a game where each decision the player makes changes the game in ways to ensure that each player's game is in the end different from any other players. But at some level, this is true of most games. There is also a thriving online community for Call of Duty, and game designers frequently take on board community feedback in order to enhance and develop their game.
This is all about trying out different learning styles, looking for ways learning works best for you. Today, students are forced in a particular way of learning set by the teacher or the course material. However, customizing one's own learning, letting students choose what way they would like to solve a problem, ensures that students work in the best and most comfortable way for them individually. It's a bit like arranging your house in a way that feels best for you. Learning in that aspect is the same. You learn best in ways that suit and complement you.
Call of Duty allows players to customize many aspects of the gameplay to suit their own styles, interests and desires. For example, players can customize the weapons and equipment used in order to suit their play style. Call of Duty allows quite different styles of play and therefore different styles of learning in order to succeed.
Identifying with someone or something is essential to achieve deep knowledge. Students should be introduced to different identities, different points of view to choose from during their learning. This creates the possibility of imitation, a way of learning we all embrace during childhood, mimicking life as we see it around us, experiencing it, and distilling our own values. Deeper learning is found in being confronted with multiple options, learning about each one, and matching them with your own personality.
In a single-player campaign mode, Call of Duty offers a primary character that players want to inhabit and can readily project their own fantasies, desires and pleasures onto. As well as during the game, during cutscenes, players view the world around them from the perspective of their character. Other elements of the game, such as online multiplayer, offer a relatively empty character, whose traits the player must determine by applying their own player style and roles within a team. Do they want to become the Slayer, Objective player, or Support player, for example?
Smart tools, as G calls them, tools that force you to think in a certain way, create a world with set possible solutions to interact with. Immersing oneself in a particular matter creates the possibility to see things differently and to come up with new and creative outcomes. Key here is the sharing aspect. Sharing your knowledge and using shared knowledge stimulates creativity, enabling you to complete a puzzle. The collaborative aspect ensures the group being smarter than the smartest person in the group. Problems today will not be solved by individuals, but by collaborative groups of people. We should include this method in education as well.
The more and better a player can manipulate a character, the more the player invests in the game world. Good games offer characters that the player can move intricately, effectively and easily throughout the world. Beyond characters, good games offer the player intricate, effective and easy manipulation of the world's objects. Objects which become tools for carrying out the player's goals. In Call of Duty, the character the player controls knows things that the player doesn't. For instance, how to plant bombs, how to use weapons or equipment, and scale walls. The player knows the things the character doesn't, like when, where and why to plant, throw or scale. The player and the character each have knowledge that must be integrated together to play the game successfully. This is an example of distributed knowledge. Knowledge is split between two things and must be integrated.
Here, G talks about creating a good problem space, an environment that gets increasingly difficult. It's useless to present very hard problems to learners if they don't know how to master the small ones. Gradually working your way up the ladder lets students grow in their learning. They learn how to recognize patterns, G says, how variables relate and interrelate to each other.
Problems in good games are well ordered. In particular, early problems are designed to lead players to form good guesses about how to proceed when they face harder problems later on in the game. In this sense, earlier parts of Call of Duty are always looking forward to later parts.
To be at the outer rim of your capabilities, yet within your regime of competence, stimulates deeper learning. Being pushed just a little further makes students learn best. In this process, feedback is very important. Being manipulated with incentives, yet without someone doing it for you, gives that spark, that will to go on. Like in a game where the player can confront the boss multiple times, education should be willing to wait until the student is good enough before getting to the big confrontation with the boss or the exam.
Call of Duty allows the player to customize many aspects of the difficulty level and gain feedback of whether things are getting too easy or too hard for the player. Call of Duty also offers a variety of game modes, such as Survival Mode, in which players can pit their skills against increasingly difficult waves of opponents.
The cycles of expertise are about learning new things, integrating them with old things to beat the boss or the exam and move on. Of course, the process starts again and again, not from scratch, but building upon each other. Moving through these cycles lets you learn new skill sets to an automatic level of mastery, preparing the student for true lifelong learning. In education, we could implement this principle to the degree where students learn at their own pace and only then take on the boss or the exam.
Good games create and support the cycle of expertise, with cycles of extended practice, tests of mastery of that practice, then a new challenge, and then new extended practice. Call of Duty does a good job of alternating fruitful practice and new challenges such that the player sense their own growing sophistication, almost as an incremental curve as the game progresses. Call of Duty also has a thriving online competitive scene, allowing players to test themselves against other organised teams. There is even a professional element, where the very best players compete against each other in online and local area network tournaments.
Students want to receive information when they can put it to use, when they feel they need it, not as reading a manual in advance. First you play, and along the way you figure out how things work. The manual is a reference book to be consulted, not to be read in its entirety. Again, this principle advocates a personal way of learning, a student-centered way of learning instead of content-centered.
Good games give verbal and written information, for example, the sort of information that is often found in a manual, just in time and on demand during a game. Call of Duty manuals tend to contain only basic information, enough for a player to just get started. Often, players will be provided with further information they need during the first few levels of gameplay, through initial tutorial levels, or through cutscenes, designed to introduce the objectives and instructions for each new level.
Fish tanks are about learning in stripped-down versions, figuring out how things work before moving on to the real stuff, getting a feel for what is to come, instead of being thrown to the wolves.
Fish tanks are stripped-down versions of the game. Good games offer players fish tanks either as tutorials or as the first level or two. Some installments of Call of Duty have game modes such as combat training in Black Ops, which allows you to play against AI bots without any real consequences or impact on your overall game score.
We need to rethink our strategy. Let's run it again.
Practicing things in a place where nothing can go wrong, just testing, without doing things that have consequences in the real world. G talks about horizontal learning before students evolve to vertical learning, letting them play in a place where it's okay to fail and try again.
Sandboxes are gameplay much like the real game, but where things cannot go too wrong too quickly, or perhaps even at all. Good games offer players, either as tutorials or as the first two levels, sandboxes. Most, if not all, Call of Duty titles have this element, where the opening levels take the form of tutorials. Call of Duty also has a variety of options for private matches, where players compete against friends and feel much more of the complexity of the whole game than you do in a fish tank. But risks and consequences are mitigated compared to the real game.
G says, people learn best when they see a set of related skills as a strategy to accomplish goals. Learners need to know how skills translate into these strategies. If students only learn what they have to without knowing where and when to use this new knowledge, real learning has not yet taken place. Knowing the context in which this knowledge occurs provides the framework people need to really understand things.
In good games, players learn and practice skills packages as part and parcel of accomplishing things they need and want to accomplish. Call of Duty even has game modes, such as Spec Ops, which are like skills tests that package certain skills that go together, show clearly how they enact a strategy, and allow the player to practice them as a functional set.
System thinking is all about seeing the big picture, seeing the forest for the trees. It's essential to learning, otherwise every fact or isolated element is meaningless. Figuring out what it's for, what its function is, where it leads up to, Just practicing something doesn't achieve deeper learning.
Good games help players see and understand how each of the elements in the game fit into the overall system of the game and its genre. In Call of Duty, players need to develop good intuitions about what works and about how what they are doing at the present moment fits into the trajectory of the game as a whole. Players must understand how to interact with the game environment, what works and what doesn't, in the context of the game, in order to benefit themselves and their team. Players have to think of the environment they're in as a complex system that must be properly understood to plan effective action and anticipate unintended consequences on one's actions.
Words and concepts have deeper meaning when they are tied to perception and action. A real experience leads to true meaning. Books and other sources can describe but never present you with the actual experience that is needed to achieve true knowledge. Experiences enable us to really understand and comprehend something with our soul, not only with our brain.
Call of Duty makes the meanings of words and concepts clear through experiences the player has and activities the player carries out. Games like Call of Duty do a very good job at making ideas, ideologies, identities, or events concrete and deeply embedded in the experience and activity.
To me, gamification can bring back the fun in education, creating an environment where students want to learn, want to figure stuff out based on their own design and their own experiences. It offers a new and fresh view on education and on how schools should change and evolve after staying stagnant for so long. The paper reminds me of a presentation by Sir Ken Robinson about how school kills creativity. He too says that education should change and try to be fun and creative again. Gamification could be the way to achieve this.